So I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube recently about books. How I read books, how to read more books, how I read 100 books in a year, how I learned to love books again. And watching all these videos really inspired me to read more books myself. So a bit of a backstory. I am not a book reader. I was never really into books as a kid. Growing up, I remember my dad would make my brother and I read 15 minutes of a book before we slept every night. And I remember looking at this 15 minutes and dreading it, and it was something that I didn't want to do. So I think during that time, I only got around to reading Del Toro Quest, if any of you guys remember what that is. And as I got older, I went from primary school to high school. It was very much the same story. I wasn't into reading books. Apart from the required texts, I didn't really do any reading. I focused on sport, I played a lot of soccer, and I focused on video games. And those were the two things that I do when it wasn't school. By no means was I a bad student. I got all right grades, but reading just wasn't for me. And I'm sure a lot of you out there can relate to this feeling of not wanting to read. But it wasn't until I got to about university when I started noticing the differences. When I was talking to different people, when I met a new person, people in my subjects, that sort of thing, they'd be able to talk about topics like politics or history, arts, psychology, philosophy, and I was sitting there stuck because all I really knew was science. I did only science in high school. I did biology, chemistry, physics. So ask me anything about science and I was your go-to man. But apart from that field, I really knew nothing. When I talked to adults, family, friends, older people, people who majored in different things, I was lost. I didn't know how to contribute to conversations. I felt out of my depth. I was a very shy 18-year-old. I didn't really know what was going on. And it wasn't until then when I realized that I should step out of my comfort zone of science and try learn about other fields. So recently I came across something in a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, where he talks about vocalizing your intentions. And I'd also heard about a study that people who tell their goals or tell their tasks publicly, they are more likely to continue them and to fulfill them. And so this video is for me to say to you guys that I want to read 52 books this year. And I know for some of you that might not sound like much, but for me, 52 books in a year is a mammoth task. And seeing that I've come so late to the party now that it's already May, I've missed 4 months. So that gives me 8 months to read 52 books, which is about 1.5 books per week. And I know this might come off self-indulgent about me telling you guys about my reading goal, but really I wanted to share it to maybe inspire or to also urge you guys to give it a shot as well. If you were anything like me and didn't read much growing up but are now trying to make an effort to read more and to go outside of your field, why not join me and why not give it a go? Now that we've got more time at home to have the time to sit down and pick up a book, there's no better opportunity. Everything that you read has been months, years of hard work by the author, by the writer, and they're instilling all their knowledge to you. In an age when everything is going video, you guys are watching me through YouTube, and there's a statistic running around saying that 90% of the content that we consume will be video in the future. Why not slow that down or be the other 10% and read a book? We read to know we're not alone. It allows us to walk in someone else's shoes, to look into their thoughts, to learn from their experiences. I've decided to spend the second half of this video talking about some of my favorite books from 2019. As George Martin put it, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. And I think some of these books capture that very message. For the first book, we have Shoe Dog, and it is the story of Phil Knight, the former CEO and founder of Nike. I say Nike, if you say Nike. It talks about his journey from his humble beginnings, trying to be a distributor of Tiger shoes, to then branching out and making his own brand, his own company, facing competition through Adidas, through Tiger. What I enjoyed about the story was that he created a cultural identity and a brand, a company that wasn't just Nike, but it was the feeling of working towards a better goal and changing the landscape of how we view exercise and how we view running. And if you're out there looking for some inspiration, I would really suggest Shoe Dog. It will really give you that kick in the gut to try something new, to start that project that you've been putting off, and to remember that it's not a linear curve. Phil Knight went through roller coasters of emotions. He went up and down, he had wins and he had losses, but it was ultimately the process that he loved, and he talks about it in the book, and I would urge you to have a read of it too. So for my second recommendation, we have Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. But it is the first book in a few books that he's written in a sort of similar area. He's also written books like Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. But talking about Sapiens, it is the history of us as a species. It brings us back 2.4 million ago to our humble beginnings, to where we started as insignificant apes who were nothing but middle of the food chain, and now how we've come to conquer pretty much planet Earth. He talks about issues like the birth of currency, the birth of religions. What separates us from other mammals is that we are able to gather each other together to create orderly systems where everything is in check, and we're able to communicate and organize ourselves into massive groups. So if you want to know about the historical elements of how we came about, the invention of fire, the Enlightenment period, a good overview of a lot of different concepts and a lot of different topics, I'd really suggest looking into Sapiens. And the last recommendation is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. So this book is extremely moving. It's a memoir of Paul Kalanithi's life. Kalanithi was a neurosurgeon who unfortunately died of inoperable lung cancer, but before he passed away, he talks about his story of how he came to be in the position that he was, and what he learned from being a doctor to becoming a patient and then to a father. And I would really recommend this if you're a healthcare student or if you're a science student, a medical student. Definitely pick this up. It's a good read to show the reality of it all, to show the hardships, what you go through, how we all struggle, and we all meet these different criteria in our lives, and we are on this rat race and we keep moving. But he tells us to sometimes slow down, to look at what's meaningful. It's an extremely moving book, and I would recommend picking this up. So that's all the recommendations that I have, and I'm really excited to get this book challenge going. I hope you guys join me in this sort of mini quest that we've set for ourselves, and I'd love to hear what book recommendations you guys have. Put them down in the comments below. I'd love to have some books to read in the next coming months, and I'm sure other people will benefit from it too. But if you made it to the end of my rambling and you enjoyed the video, can you please chuck us a like and subscribe to see more content like this. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time, this was Sebastian. Stay sharp.
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind when I think of you sometimes.